Yes, sir. Good morning.
Yes, good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. I want to go over that assignment y'all did. Some of y'all did it really well, but some of y'all not really. Okay. Well, the minority of you, I think there are two really screwed it up, but I think the others got above 68, 68 and above. Okay, but none of you really did it properly. And I'll try. I sent you email. I encourage you to do it, but none of you did it. Okay. So here's the circuit. Here's the transfer function for that circuit. We know that RF of Rn must be 10 because we want a DC gain of 10. Okay. Because when we have DC, this term is just 1. Okay. We want a DC gain of negative 10. Oh, by the way, one person is writing this nonsense. And I pointed out to him now. Okay. I'm pointing out to him now because this is the second or third time he wrote this nonsense. And I corrected it both times, and he still wrote that same nonsense. The gain is negative 10. How could negative 10 be the magnitude of negative 10? The magnitude of negative 10 is 10. How can negative 10 be equal to 10? So clearly that's nonsense. So I get the feeling that students are not reading. I take a lot of trouble to mark every line. And the students are not taking the time to learn from their mistakes. Don't write this, okay? This is a true statement if A is positive. Because 10 equals the magnitude of 10, that's a correct statement. But if A is negative, it's nonsense. All right. So clearly then, the cutoff frequency is 1 over RFC. Okay. And the cutoff frequency is 2 pi FC, 1 over RFC. Okay. So FC is 1 over 2 pi RFC. Now, that omega C is not equal to FC. Despite the fact that I sent that notice out, there's one student who still gave me in a solution omega C equals FC. Needless to say, you got a design wrong. Okay. So here's what I want then. Here's what I want. I want a cutoff frequency of 1,000 hertz. I want a cutoff frequency of 1,000 hertz. Okay. And I want Rn to be at least 10 kilo ohms. At least. Now I know I didn't make that. I know I didn't make that criterion. So if you didn't do that, I didn't penalize you. So if I want Rn to be at least 10 kilo ohms, RF must be greater than or equal to 100K. So now that gives us a rough value of C, because now we can put that here in this equation to get a rough value. And I say rough, although many of you thought that was your final C value. All right, so C then, from this equation, C is equal to 1 over 2 pi FC RF. So our initial C then, this is our initial C. It's going to be 1 over 2 pi 10,000 RF times 10 to the 5. So 1 over 2 pi, 1 over 2 pi times 10 to the 9, which is 1 over 2 pi. 0.1592 times 10 to the minus 9. Okay. Now, what capacitor is close? What capacitor is close to 0.1592 nano? This would be farad. 0.1592 nanofarad. What capacitor value is close to that? Well, we need a list of capacitors. We need a list of capacitors. And where do we get such a list? From the internet. And here's one such list. All right. Now, looking at this list, what's close to 0.1592 nanofarad?
What you use is the value on the first column is 0.015.
Again?
On the first row right here, 0.015.
15 what? Microfarad? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
And that's what? 0.015 times 10 to the minus 6? Right. So 0.015 times 10 to the minus 6, okay, is equal to what? 15 times 10 to the minus 9, isn't that right? Did I get that right?
Yeah, I think so. I ain't close.
Okay, but we don't want 15 nano. We want 0.15 nano.
So you'll have to add a next zero behind it as decimal point for this. The same number I give you.
So how are we going to do that?
And you write in, you just put 0.0015 microfarad.
And is that a valid capacitor?
Oh,
Dr. Cartwright,
Yes.
wouldn't it be easy to do the picofarads?
We have to go to the picofarad. Yes. Which picofarad we go to?
1500.
And 1500 picofarad is how much?
I do good with the
10 to the minus 12, eh?
Pico is 10 times 10 to the minus 12.
yeah.
What do we want? What do we want?
We want a value.
Yeah, go ahead.
We want a value close to 0.159 nanofarads.
Yes, and 0.1592 nanofarads is what? is 1.5. 1.5 times what? 10 to the minus 10. Now, what number? So we want 1.5 times 10 to the minus 10. So is that 1500 or is that 150? So 150 times 10 to the minus 12 is 150 times 10 to the minus 12. Is that 1.5 times 10 to the minus 10?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. So we want to use 150 picofarad. We want to use use 150 picofarad. But we ain't done. Okay. Let me tell you what we got so far. Okay. I want to color frequency of 1,000 hertz. Okay. If I assume the input impedance is 10 kilo ohms, then RF has to be 100 kilo ohms. Okay. Why? Because we need a gain of 10. And then RF would be 100 kilo ohms. And if we assume RF is 100 kilo ohms, we end up with a 0.1592 nanofarad capacitor that we need. And the closest thing we can come to that is 150 picofarad. 150 picofarad. Now, are we done? No, we're not done.
So you have to use that value.
Say again?
Now I'm asking if you should use that value, the capacitor value, to find the RF.
Yes, Mr. Beauchamp, you got it. Yeah, so it's always best to start the design off with the capacitor value. Why? There are very few capacitor values. There are many, many, many more resistor values. So now we know roughly what capacitor we need. Let's try C equals 150 picofarad. Let's try that. So what would RF be? RF will be 1 over 2 pi FC times C, which is 1 over 2 pi times 1,000. What did I do? Yes, times C, 150 times 10 to the minus 12. Okay, which is 1 over 2 pi times 150 times 10 to the minus 9, which is 10 to the 9 over 300 pi, which is did I screw up somewhere? Because I've got like 1.6 meg. .06 meg. Okay, let's try 1500, see what happens. 1500. 1500. All right. So this would be 3,000 pi. Yes. Which would be what? 106.1 kilo ohms. Okay. Let's check that then. 106.13 times 1500 minus 12 times 2 times pi, reciprocal, 1000 hertz. Yes, 1000 hertz. Now we ask, what's the closest thing to this? What's the closest thing to this? So we go to our table. We go to our resistance table. And we want 106.1. Where's 106.1? Well, there is 107. And there's 105. Which one of these going to choose?
10.7.
10.7. So use 107 kilo ohms. Use 107 kilo ohms. Okay. Use 107 kilo ohms. So now let's do designed cutoff frequency. So designed cutoff frequency. One over 2 pi times 107 times 1500 picofarad. What is that equal to? That equals 10 to the 9 over 3000 pi times 107. Which is 991.6 hertz. 991.6 hertz. This is actually what we designed. We wanted 1,000. This is all desired. That's all desired, 1,000. What did I just design? 991.6. What kind of error is that? That's a very low error. That is, let's do it. 99.1, 991.6 minus 1,000 divided by 1,000 times 100. That's negative 0.84% error. Negative 0.84% error. Now, there's only one person who did better than that in homework in terms of error. Why? Because his frequency was such that he had 0 error, but he just lucked out. Some of you gave me huge errors. As a matter of fact, there was at least one person who did design, okay, and then didn't even check what his design cutoff frequency was. And he thought he had a design that works. But it turned out his error was greater than 5%. All right. It is always true if you choose C and then calculate R and then use a 1% resistor, you're going to get a good percentage error. And then, of course, it's RF. This is now RF. And then RN must be what? 1/10 of that. 99.16. No. Sorry. 107. 10.7 kilo ohms. This resistor should always be 1/10 of that because you wanted a gain of 10. And why some of you didn't do that, I don't know. But fortunately for you, I didn't put any error criterion on the gain. I should have. I should have said the gain must be within plus or minus 1%. And some of you would have failed the design. Before I go on, any questions about this? And then, of course, the last step of the homework was measure the actual frequency, cutoff frequency. And that means plotting the magnitude response and plotting the phase response. Okay? And we get FC from the measured FC. Now, most of y'all did this right, but there were one or two of you didn't do this right. We get measured FC from the MAG plot. By locating what? By locating what magnitude? What magnitude we had to locate? How come some of y'all did this right on homework? Actually, most of y'all did this right on homework. Okay. Here's the MAG plot. Okay. What's the DC gain? The DC gain was 20 log 10. Where's our cutoff frequency?
Should be by close to 17.
Log 10.
This value, the DC gain minus 3. No. 17 log 10? Is that dB? We located this gain here. What gain is this? This gain here is 20 log 10. That's DC gain minus 3.01 dB. And as it turns out, this value here was 20 dB. For most of you, it's 20 dB. Because some of you did RF or RN, that wasn't equal to 10. Your DC gain was different. Okay. So in this case, this would be approximately 17 dB. This would be approximately 17 dB. And when we get 17 dB, that would be our FC. Now, on the homework I'm going to give next, which I will explain, I want the DC gain to be, what did they say? 1.5N? Okay. So what you're going to do for this homework is, this is 20 log 1.5N, where N is your number. So what magnitude are you going to look for? You're going to look for this number, okay? 20 log 1.5N minus 3.01 dB. This is the number you can look for. And then that would be the measured. That would be the measured cutoff frequency. Are we following this?
Dr. Goddard, question.
Yeah, go ahead.
On the previous paper, I see you calculated the error. Could you go over that one more time, please?
Oh, I calculated the error?
Yes, sir.
Well, error is simply what you got minus what you want divided by what minus what you want. So,
Okay.
Percentage error is actual minus ideal over ideal times 100%. That's percentage error.
So if your actual is like let's say one or two numbers off, would that affect your percentage, or would it still like give you like roughly around what you looking for?
Well, as long as this number, if I say I want a plus or minus 5%, this number here can't be more than 5% what I want.
Okay.
So, okay, when you do this calculation, your answer cannot be more than 5%.
All right, I got you. Thanks.
Or negative 5%. Okay. And then of course we measure, we also get measured FC from the Bode phase plot. And what for this homework, what were we looking for there?
That when we was looking at 135 degrees.
Yeah, it's 135. We go to 135 degrees and we read off FC. We go to 135 degrees and we read off FC. And of course, this FC and this FC are going to be different numerically, but they have to be very close. Okay. Because the filter has only one cutoff frequency. But we have two different measurements, and those measurements are not going to be the same because this is a swab. The magnitude response will give you one answer, and the phase response is going to give you another answer. But those answers have to be close. Okay. That's what you should have done. That's what you should have done on the homework you turned in. Now let's get to the homework that I want you to do for Friday. What's the transfer function of this? Well, first of all, tell me what you see. When you look at the circuit, you should see something. What do you see?
Non-inverting.
Non-inverting what?
Amplifier. Pop amp.
Well, you see that.
High pass build-up.
That's a non-inverting op amp circuit. And what else you see? Miss Pinto, try again. Huh? Anybody else? Miss Pindot, you should be shocked because we just did this morning. What is this?
Low pass build-up.
First order low pass filter. And how are these two stages connected? All these two stages connected. What am I missing? Mr. Torian. All these two stages connected. Wow. Look at this. Surely somebody can tell me how they're connected. We just did this a couple of lessons ago. But y'all don't study.
In serious.
Time. In series, no, we don't call it series. We don't call it series. What do we call it? And it's the same statement I made to you a few lessons ago. And yes, you knew this since 235. We covered this in 235 on this connection. And we covered it again in 320. Stage 2 is cascaded. Stage 1. This rings any bells? The connecting and cascade?
That's up.
No. What do you do with transfer? What do you do with transfer functions if they're cascaded? What's the overall transfer function? What's the overall transfer function? So I don't guess anybody bothered getting the transfer function for this, right? Like I asked in my email. Anybody bother getting the transfer function? Well, Dr. Cartwright, you weren't going to mark it, so we didn't even think about this shit. Oh, goodness. Okay. When you cascade stages, you multiply the transfer functions. Again, this is from 235. When you cascade stages, you multiply the transfer function. So this has a transfer function, and this has a transfer function. That's provided stage 2 does not load down stage 1. So the overall transfer function HT is H1 times H2, provided stage 2 does not load down stage 1. And how do we know that's true in this case? How do we know stage 2? How do we know the stage 2 is not loading down stage 1? Are y'all doing 420 this semester?
I'm not.
But everybody else is. Surely by now y'all have discussed cascade and transfer functions. Turnquest? Who's Turnquest? Dr. Turner, please be respectful. Yeah, it's with Dr. Turner. Block diagrams of what? Of transfer functions. So you're doing block diagrams, then you're doing how you manipulate those block diagrams. In other words, how you manipulate the transfer functions. Wow. Those block diagrams represent circuits. You realize that, right?
That's all.
And each of those blocks there's a circuit. See, I can give you a block diagram for this. You know what the block diagram for this? First order low pass filter, followed by non-inverting now. There's your block diagram. There's your block diagram. And now what's your overall block diagram? What's your overall block diagram? The overall block diagram is we can combine these two transfer functions. And how we can combine those? We multiply the transfer functions. So this going to be H1, transfer function 1. What symbol you all use for transfer for transfer functions? What symbol you all use in 120?
G of S. G.
Yeah, that may be right. G1, not J. G. Okay, sounded like J. Okay. So yeah, some books use G. H1 times H2. And that's called a forward transfer function. I wish y'all see the beauty of all this and how it's all interconnected. The stuff
all the teachers don't explain this stuff in the depth you was explaining this too.
Well, what can I say? Y'all gonna miss me when I retire. Which, by the way, is gonna happen very soon.
You get done take all your classes before you retire.
I'm retiring at the end of the fall.
Yeah, we only left 460 with you, right? That's the only thing else to teach after this, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so we could be your last class.
Well, I hope that's a good thing for y'all. All right. Unless I decide to come back in the spring, but I know about that. I'm getting tired because I'm getting tired of teaching and students don't learn. Y'all think y'all understand when I'm teaching it, but because you don't go home and learn it, you don't retain it. I've been through all this stuff before. Well, the fact that stage 1 and stage 2 are cascaded. And I'm pretty shocked Dr. Turner told you also that H1 is cascaded with H2. I'm pretty sure he told you that. So I told you that, he told you that, and you still don't know it.
We ain't take that class yet, Dr. Godwin.
Say what?
Ain't anybody take that class yet.
Well, okay, I understand that. But ideally, you'll be doing these two classes together. I don't know why some of you are not.
Like for me, at the end of my third year, some people in their fourth year.
But if you've done 320, you can do. If you've done 320, you could do 420. So who advising you? You advising yourself, eh?
I ain't no advisor. You supposed to be you was my first advisor, and you don't check.
Yo, man, when was the last time you come to me for advisement?
The only first time I didn't even know how the process go, because after that COVID it started.
Yo, man, if I am legally advised, I don't even know if I am.
Yeah, you was my first advisor when I came in.
Listen to me. I may have been the person who advised you first, but that doesn't mean I'm your legal advisor.
Yeah, but I didn't understand the process then.
All right. Who is advising you now?
Nobody. I just signed up for my classes myself.
Exactly. And had you sought out a true advisor, they would have made sure you did 410 and 420 together. Especially if you sought me out.
God, right?
You tell them that, eh?
I tell him that.
All right. Anyway, the rest of you, because I know the rest of you doing the same nonsense. Let me just say this. I've seen people about to graduate who think they're graduating, but they can't graduate. You know why? They misadvise themselves. And not only they misadvise themselves so they can't graduate, they do courses they don't have to do. And they don't do the courses they must do. And I've seen these people when they're about to graduate. You know why I see them when they're about to graduate? Because then you have to find an advisor to sign your graduation form. Meanwhile, if you sought out an advisor from the break, you could have all these problems. You wouldn't have these problems. So listen to me, Mr. Beauchamp, if I'm your advisor, let me advise you. The rest of you, find out who your advisor is, okay, and be advised. Because the person who advised themselves has a fool for an advisor. You know how they say if a lawyer defends himself, he's a fool? Same thing. Because you think you understand the whole thing, but you don't. And you get into trouble. And then I see these troubles when you're about to graduate. Talk to an advisor, folks. And by the way, by now, y'all should be filling out the graduation form. so that you can see if you're on track to graduate. I'm not saying you should be turning in now, but you should be filling in the course in the proper space. You're on track to graduate. And all of you can do that. And if you want me to check it after you've done it, I'll check it after you've done it. But really, you need to find your advisor so he can check it after you've done it. It's online. Just Google UB graduation form. And they'll send you to the site. And you don't got to fill in all that information. You just got to fill in all the information for the courses. So you know you're okay to graduate.
They still do graduation in the fall, right?
They do graduation. You could graduate in December, yes, but you can't walk then. You could graduate in the summer, but you can't walk then. You could graduate in the spring, and you can walk. You can only walk in the spring. That's the only time they have a graduation ceremony. All right, let's get back to this problem hand because I have to leave a little bit early. So I said if stage 2 doesn't load down stage 1, by the way, in 420, that's always the assumption that your block 2 is not on your block 1. And therefore your transfer function is going to be the product of the cascaded of your product. If you have a third stage here, your whole transfer function will be the product. But in the real world, you got to make sure stage 2 is not loading down stage 1. Now, how do I know stage 2 is not loading down stage 1? And yes, all of you know this answer. And when I tell it to you, you're going to tell me that makes sense. But I shouldn't have. Go ahead.
I was asking is because the capacitor was on the stage 1 side. I know.
No, that's not the reason.
Is it because stage 2 does not have a source?
What do you mean? Yes, it is stage 2 has a source. What's the source of stage 2?
There's
That
one.
would be out the ground. But
That's the output of stage 1. The output of stage 1 is the source, is the input source, stage 2.
oh,
So really from here to here it would be V out 1. And this here is really V out 2. This is V out 1 and it's also VI 2. I mean, surely that's self-evident. But we usually, in this case, I just want to call this V out. How do I know stage 2 is not loading down stage 1? I remember us doing this in 235. You all had a project. You all had this project. Okay. What's that? What's that? What's this first? What's this first block? Anyway, my time is going. My time is going. The first block here is a high pass filter. The second block is a low pass filter. Overall, this is a band pass filter. We did all this in 235. How do we know stage 2 did not load down stage 1? This resistor here, R2, is greater than or equal to 10 times R1. We did that. But of course, you don't remember that. All right. Now back here, how do we know stage 2 is not loading down stage 1? There's 0 amps flowing through here. 0 amps. So it's just like nothing's connected to that capacitor. It's like nothing's connected to the capacitor. So stage 2 is not loading down stage 1. All right. That being the case, then the overall transfer function is the product of the transfer functions. What's the transfer function of stage 1? What's the transfer function of stage 1? Wow. The sound of silence. Folks, what's the transfer function of a low-pass filter?
That's 1 over. That was.
Is it 1 over SC plus 1?
RSCA.
That's all plus 1. And what's tar?
RC.
More specifically, look at the diagram.
R1.
R1C.
Yeah.
It's R1C. What's stage 2? What's the gain of stage 2? What's the transfer function of stage 2?
Transfer function, that's negative RF over RI.
Don't talk fool.
Or you could say, let me see.
It's a non-inverting amplifier. There's no negative involved.
Plus 1. Or 1 plus RF over RI
1 plus RF of RI.
times.
Excuse me? There's your transfer function right there. There's your transfer function. Your total transfer function right there. And what's that? That's just gain times the low pass filter. So what's the what's the cutoff frequency of this entire?
You're breaking up on my end.
What's the cutoff frequency of the entire circuit? What's the cutoff frequency of the entire circuit?
The 2 pi.
The cutoff frequency is 2 pi?
Sorry.
1 over 2
1 over 2 pi.
RFC.
No. Not 1 over RFC. No, not at all. RF has nothing to do with the cutoff frequency. RI has nothing to do with the cutoff frequency. What resistor is connected with the low pass filter?
R1.
R1.
R1, yes.
So it's 1 over R1C? Oh.
What,
No,
what,
it's 1 over
yes.
2 pi. No,
Omega C would be 1 over R1C. That's omega C.
you're looking for FC.
What is FC then?
FC would be 1 over 2.
What is it?
1 over 2 pi R1C.
Yes. Okay. This second stage, what does the second stage do? It does nothing. It does nothing other than what? Change the DC gain. Change the DC gain. It doesn't add to the phase. Okay. Well, let's do that. Let's do that. What's the magnitude now? What's the magnitude of the Lowell transfer function? Mr. Johnson, are you wrong on somebody?
My mic mute.
That wasn't you, right?
No, sir.
Oh, okay. What's the overall, what's the magnitude? What's the magnitude of the overall transfer function? Oh, well.
And that could be 1 over. Is it 1 over J omega R1C?
That'd be the magnitude of this. It's the magnitude of this times the magnitude of that. And the magnitude of the first one will be 1 over J omega tau plus 1 times 1 plus RF of RI, which is 1 over the square root of 1 squared plus omega tau squared times 1 plus RF of RI. This is the overall magnitude. And in terms of dB, 20 log the magnitude of HT equals 20 log of all this. And the log of a product is the sum of the logs. So this is 20 log 1 over 1 plus omega tau squared plus 20 log of 1 plus RF of RI. So dB total equals dB low pass filter plus dB gain plus gain in dB. So when we plot that, it looks like this. Where now the DC gain is just the gain of the amp. Gain of amp. And again, where's FC? FC would be what? Negative 3 dB. So this is the gain of amp. So where we locate the cutoff range would be what? Would be gain of amp NdB minus 3.01 dB. And that will give you FC. So this is very much like what we did, how we started out this lesson today. Except that this was 20 dB for most people, but it ain't gonna be 20 dB. This gain of amp is gonna be, in fact, very close to.
I thought you say 1.5 and
This. Yeah, close to 20 log 1.5N. Because that's the DC gain. Now, what about the phase? Help me out. What's the overall phase?
Ricardo, you finished with that page?
No.
Good.
What's the overall phase, folks?
Well, we have to find the angle of the transfer function and the angle of non-invariant.
And it's
All
gonna
right.
be. Oh, never mind.
So, in fact, then, this is what? This is phase of H1 plus the phase of H2. Why? Because it's a product. And you add phases in a product. What's the phase angle of H1?
This is the angle of J over J omega tau.
Sorry, you have to start over. You broke up.
Sorry about that. I was thinking about the angle of 1 over J omega tau plus 1.
Yes. Why? Because H1 is a transfer function for a low-pass filter, which is what? Which is negative inverse tan of omega tau. Right. And what's the angle of H2? What's the angle of H2?
Is it also the negative tan inverse omega tau?
Why? Why do you say that? You say that because you don't know, you don't understand what H1 is and what H2 is. Is H1 equal to H2?
No.
No, they're totally different. So why would the angle of H2 be the same thing as the angle of H1? Let's look at this. It's H2. Give me a typical value for H2. Give me a reasonable value for H2. See, y'all don't have an appreciation of what the math means. And the only way you get that appreciation is to work with this stuff. And you don't take the time to work with this stuff. All right, let me ask the question another way. What kind of number is H2? What kind of number is H2?
Complex number.
No, it's not. It is not a complex number. Why is it? Why would it be a negative number?
It's a positive number, right? Because it's 1 plus 2.
It is H2 is 1 plus RF of R. All right. That's a positive real number.
And would we
That's-
minus that? Would we minus that by
Excuse me?
I was wondering, would we use that number and would we minus tan inverse negative?
Yeah, man, why are we going to take the negative of that? This is a non-inverting amplifier. There's no negative and a non-inverting amplifier. See, we don't know basic facts. And therefore you get into trouble. The gain of a non-inverting amplifier is a positive real number. There's no negative involved. It is in fact 1 plus RF of Ri. It's a positive real number. What's the angle of a positive real number?
Zero.
0 degrees. 0 degrees. 0 degrees. So you see how the overall phase is just the phase of a low pass filter? Equals phase of a low pass filter. All right, I'm going to move this now. Everybody got a clip of this?
Yes,
Oh,
sir.
so hold on. Give me a sec. Yeah, they got it.
Okay. So what does the phase of low pass filter look like? Anybody? What's the phase of low pass filter look like on a poly plot?
It start declining, going from left to right.
All right. Where does it decline from?
From the center of the intersection of the X and Y axis. From 0 degrees.
What's
0
from
degrees
0 degrees? Thank you very much. From 0 degrees to what?
to 90 degrees.
No,
Negative 90.
negative 90. Yes. Okay, so it looks like this. It looks like that. And how do we identify the cutoff frequency?
And we have the work with the angle.
Yeah, man. How do we say again?
Will be minus 45 degrees.
Thank you very much. So we locate negative 45 degrees. We locate negative 45 degrees, and the corresponding frequency is a cutoff frequency. So last time we located 135 degrees. In the previous problem, we located 135 degrees because that was an inverting. And when you have a low pass filter followed by an inverting gain, the inverting gain adds 180 degrees. But this is a non-inverting gain, so it adds 0 degrees. So when you plot the overall transfer function, when you plot the phase of the overall transfer function, you look for the negative 45 degree, and then whatever frequency that is, that's your measured frequency from the phase point.
You can't write it down, please.
No, this is university.
Oh man. We want you to write it down, you know. Get a
I
better
know
gist of it.
y'all want me to do your work for you. Look at the graph and tell me in words what it says. If you look at the graph, you can write your own sentence without me even telling you what that sentence is. I already told you what the sentence is. You look at the graph and you tell me no. Tell me what you understand this is saying.
Just to be clear, you say a non-inverting.
I'm talking about, go ahead.
Now it's being even used describing the phase and the non-inverting op amp and the inverting op amp.
Yeah, man. I'm just saying what this is saying.
In a non-inverting, it adds 0 degrees, and
And in inverting, 180 degrees, one inverting amplifier. That's what we did in the assignment you handed in earlier. But for a non-inverting, it's 0 degrees. You're adding 0 degrees. But that's not what I said about this graph. What am I saying about this graph? What information are we trying to get from this graph?
trying to get the color frequency.
We're trying to get a color frequency. And how do we do that? What is this graph saying? How do we do that?
It's saying a negative 45 degrees.
Yes, locate the negative 45 degrees. Locate this point, negative 45. Okay. And the corresponding FC would be the corresponding F will be your FC. Why? Because at the cutoff frequency, the phase is negative 45. Folks, we just did this in the previous example. Now, what I'm hearing is some of y'all didn't understand the previous example, the previous homework. In the previous homework, it wasn't locate negative 45. In the previous homework, it was locate negative 40, positive 135. Because it was the second stage. Even though that was the one stage circuit. Okay, where's that? Even though this looked like a one-stage circuit, it behaved like a two-stage circuit. Okay. Why? Because the transfer function could have been written as two transfer functions multiplied. Okay. The transfer function of this was, what was the transfer function of this? Negative RF over Rn, 1 over S RF C plus 1. That's what the transfer function was. See the gain, negative gain, multiplied by what? Low pass filter. We have the same thing in this circuit. We have the same thing Alright? It's the same thing. It's the gain. Well, it's positive gain now. It's low pass filter. It's the same thing. Well, not the very. It's a very similar thing. It's gain times transfer function low pass filter. Here, it's more obvious. It's more obvious in this circuit. Okay. And in the previous circuit, it is implied. It's implied that we only have one stage, but it's behaving like there's two stages involved. H1 followed by H2. Well, the other way around. This was H1 and that was H2. All right. Any questions about this? All right. Now let's get to, and then I have to wrap up real quick. Let's get to the actual questions I'm asking. Which is what? Let me find it. Assignment 3. All right. I just been through design with you. Okay. Okay. So I'm telling you what DC gain I want. I'm telling you that R1 must be greater than or equal to 10 kilo ohms. Okay. So I'm then telling you to calculate the design cutoff frequency and make sure you're within 5%. And now what's different from last time is calculate your design gain. I didn't ask you to calculate design gain last time because I assumed that everybody would have made Rn 1/10 of RF. But that wasn't the case. In this case, everybody got a different gain, so that can't happen anyway. Calculate design gain. Be sure it is within 2% of the desired value. The desired value is 1.5N. That's the desired value. Your design value depends upon what values you actually choose for your resistors. And then the rest of it is exactly what we did last class. I mean, in the last assignment. Simulate your design PSpice, plot the simulated magnitude response, being sure to give me properly snipped graphs. Okay. Measure the cutoff frequency from the magnitude response. We went over today how to do that. Do the same now. Do the same for the phase response. And measure the cutoff frequency properly. So this assignment is very much like what we just did. Okay. Any questions or concerns? All right. Did I say when this is due? Due before noon on Friday. Due before noon on Friday.
Yes, sir.
All right? You can have Wednesday's class to finish this off. Don't start on Wednesday's class.
You can start today, man.
Yeah, Mr. Adley. You always say shit. You always say the right shit, and then don't do it. Any other comments? Well, I'll see you Friday. We'll have class on Friday.
Yes, sir.
All right. Bye-bye.
Today.
Good day.
Yes, sir.